What is up, guys? So for this video I wanted to review the newest DC animated movie, which is Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. And right off the bat I want to say this was one of my favorite DC animated movies in a while. I used to think that they just knocked it out of the park with every movie, but lately their movies have been getting worse and worse. Especially last year they released Batman and Harley Quinn, which was a terrible movie, and I thought they weren't doing so well with their movies. But now with Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, I think that they're actually getting back into it. Also with Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which I didn't review, but I thought it was actually pretty good. I think DC is actually getting back into it with the animated movies, going off from last year, which was just so terrible with that one movie. But like I said, this movie was actually really good. If I really thought about it, I'd probably put it as my favorite of the New 52 animated movies, aside from Flashpoint Paradox, which, spoiler alert, does tie into the movie, but that's not really a New 52 movie. It is in the same universe as these movies, but it's not in the New 52 version of this universe, so it's not really in the same timeline. So Suicide Squad Hell to Pay is probably my favorite movie of the bunch, which isn't saying much, because the New 52 animated DC movies aren't great for the most part. They're good, but they're not great. There are some good ones here and there. There are some great ones here and there, like Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. So the fact that it's the best actually doesn't mean a lot, but it also means a good amount, just because the universe isn't bad. It's good. It's much better than the DCEU, which is another DC universe. It's a lot better than that one. So for this movie, since this introduces us to a bunch of characters, I want to go over those characters and tell you guys what I thought about them. First of all, the main character of the movie, Deadshot, I thought he was incredibly badass. Like, he might be right up there with the Arrow version of the character as my favorite version of Deadshot. He was so badass. His storyline with his daughter was actually really well done, and by the end of the movie I actually cared about it, so that was really cool. His fight scenes were awesome. It's just everything about Deadshot in this movie were great. I loved his character. Again, he's right up there with the version of Arrow that was on Arrow, and it hasn't really shown up at all since he died in Season 3, spoiler alert, and then he showed up one more time. That doesn't really matter. He was great on Arrow, and he's just as good, if not even a little better, in this movie. I love this character, and I love his fight scenes. The second character is Harley Quinn. I thought that in the Suicide Squad movie, she was incredibly overdone, and by that point just became annoying, and this version of the character isn't that much different, but the fact that she's more in the background actually makes such a big difference, because in this movie she's a fun character. There's not much to her, but she is a fun character. In Suicide Squad, the movie, the live-action movie, she's really annoying, in my opinion. Here, she's fun. So the fact that she's sidelined actually factors into how good this character is. The third character that I really wanted to talk about for a little bit is Bronze Tiger. And just like Deadshot, I thought he was really, really badass as well. His background was really interesting. Like, I never really knew much about the character. Like, the extent of what I knew was what we saw on Arrow, which, looking at this character versus the one on Arrow, he was really given the short end of the stick on Arrow. On Arrow, he was a really one-dimensional villain who just had claws, not much of a fighter, and definitely not a vigilante like he is in this movie. He was just a villain. So this version of the character is just so much better. I always knew that he was like one of the best fighters in the DC universe, and that's really, really shown in this movie. His fight scenes are just great. His fight scenes are amazing, just like Deadshot's fight scenes. He and Deadshot also had a bunch of clashes of personalities, which I really liked. That was done really well as well. I just really liked this character. I liked his storyline throughout the movie, and his background was really interesting, and his fight scenes were awesome. And spoiler alert, I don't really need to say that because this is a spoiler review. It says that in the title. But his death was really well deserved. Like, the fact that he got the card that means he went straight to heaven. I mean, the opposite of hell. That felt, for me, was very well deserved by the character. I'm sure there are other people on world who deserve it a lot more on the earth that deserve it a lot more than him. But in this movie, I feel like nobody deserved it more than him. So I'm glad, and I thought that his death was so well done. I just really liked the character. Everyone else on the Suicide Squad, however, weren't as fleshed out as Deadshot and Bronze Tiger. Like Harley Quinn, she was fun, like I said, but she wasn't really fleshed out. And then the other members, Copperhead, Boomerang, and Killer Frost, none of them got much character development past Copperhead, past Hiss, and Boomerang past just saying some Australian slang, and then Killer Frost past going and joining with Zoom's team, and then killing, and then going back on them, and then going back on Suicide Squad. She didn't get that much character development. I did like her background and the use of her powers, but none of these characters got much character development, and I think that's actually not a bad thing, because this movie really focused on Deadshot and Bronze Tiger, which those two were the best characters. So that's actually this definitely a good thing in my opinion. Those two characters in the front, while everyone else, Harley Quinn, Copperhead, Boomerang, and Killer Frost in the back. That's actually the best case scenario. And the last character is Amanda Waller, which, just like Copperhead, Boomerang, and Killer Frost, didn't get much character development past the fact that she clearly has cancer and needs the card because she knows that she's done some bad things and is going to hell, and she wants to go to heaven, which is what drove the plot of the movie, which is really the only thing I didn't really like about the movie. The plot was a little stale. All it was Amanda Waller telling the Suicide Squad to get the card, which grants people straight access to heaven, and that's all it was. The Suicide Squad just went to get that card, but I guess it was a much better plot than the Suicide Squad movie was, which was just the Enchantress is destroying Midway City, go stop her. That was the entirety of that plot. So I guess this plot is a little bit better than that one, but like that's really it. I mean, that's not saying much. Being better than that movie's plot isn't saying much, because that movie didn't really have a plot. This movie, it did kind of, but not really, and it wasn't the greatest plot. But the fact that the plot wasn't bad actually didn't hinder the movie much, because everything around it was really great, and it focused more on that, like the characters, specifically Deadshot and Bronze Tiger, and the villains, which was pretty great, and the bloody, violent fight scenes are really focused on that, and a lot of deaths, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the twist. There are a lot of things about this movie that made it so the plot didn't really the lack of a plot to an extent didn't really hinder it that much. So Zoom was in this movie, and for me he's really called the Reverse Flash, because for me it's always Reverse Flash is Eobard Thawne and Zoom is Hunter Zolomon, but in the movie he was called Zoom for some reason, and it is Eobard Thawne, and he was an amazing, great villain in the movie. His inclusion in the movie served for the best twists in this universe ever, and one of the best twists in any DC movie I've ever seen. The fact that he was actually the Reverse Flash from the Flashpoint movie just actually blew my mind. Like when he took off his mask, revealing that huge hole in his head where Batman, or Thomas Wayne Batman from Flashpoint, shot him through the head like that. That actually blew my mind. I could not believe that they actually went there, and it was great. The twist really went well for me, in my opinion. I thought the twist was great, and it really served to better the movie. And even without it, Zoom was a really compelling villain. He always is. Again, not really Zoom. Reverse Flash is always a compelling villain. He's one of probably my favorite DC villain ever, so his inclusion in this movie was definitely a plus. The other main villain was Vandal Savage, who wasn't as great and was really a shadow of what the character can be, like how he is in Justice League and how he's not in Legends of Tomorrow. This version isn't as bad as the one in Legends of Tomorrow, just because the accent on Legends of Tomorrow really annoys me for some reason. This version was just the most stale version of Vandal Savage I've ever seen, but that doesn't really matter. He wasn't really the main villain of the movie. The main villain was, it was kind of Reverse Flash or Zoom, but if you think about it, there wasn't really a main villain. Everybody, except for like Bronze Tiger and Deadshot and Harley Quinn, were villains in this movie, because that's what the Suicide Squad is about. So that is actually really done well. There was no clear main villain. Nobody was really a villain. It was kind of Reverse Flash, it was kind of Vandal Savage, but there wasn't really a main villain at all. Something I really liked about this movie is the fact that it is actually important and circumstantial to the movie universe that it's in. Compare that with the DCEU Suicide Squad, which is, if you just pluck it out of the universe, it would not change a damn thing at this point in the universe. So the fact that this was actually circumstantial to the universe is a big plus. I know I'm comparing these two movies a lot, but that's because this is actually how you do a Suicide Squad movie right, while the one in DCU is how you do it wrong. So I really like comparing the two, but the reason this is circumstantial to the universe is because it killed off so many characters, which some of those characters really are huge characters in the DC universe, like For instance, Count Vertigo, Punch, Julie, Killer Frost, Copperhead, Pig, Zoom, Vandal Savage, Blockbuster, Knockout, Tobias Whale, and Silver Banshee. Those are all the characters that died, which is an incredible amount of characters, and some of those characters like Count Vertigo, Killer Frost, Pig, Zoom, Vandal Savage, and Tobias Whale and Silver Banshee are really big villains in the universe, so the fact that they all died was insane to me. Like, I did not expect to get that many deaths, and that's really a big plus about this movie, is that it was not afraid to kill off characters, and like I said, it killed off a lot of characters, like all the characters I just listed. It's like 10 or 12 circumstantial deaths in this movie, which is actually a really big plus on the movie. With all that in mind, I'll give this movie a 9.3 out of 10. It is definitely, or probably, my favorite movie in the New 52 DC animated universe, except for Flashpoint. If that's included, I don't really know, because it was just great. The main two characters, Deadshot and Bronze Tiger, were both really great characters. The side characters in the Suicide Squad weren't as great, but that's because they were side characters, so that doesn't really matter. The villain of the movie, which I guess is Zoom, was great, and it served for such a great twist. And the fact that the movie was not afraid to kill off characters really served it well, because it made it actually important to the universe, which is also a good thing. The fight scenes were extremely bloody and violent, which at sometimes was a little much because it was extremely violent. I just felt bad for the people that had to endure that much violence for some reason, but it were some pretty great fight scenes within that, and the plot wasn't that great. So 9.3 I think is fitting for all of that. The fact that the plot was not great, I already explained why that doesn't really affect the score. So 9.3 I think is a good score. But let me know what you thought about the movie in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter for better notifications for my videos and daily polls about the Arrowverse and things like that. Or if you don't have Twitter, click the notification icon next to the subscribe button for better notifications for my videos, because YouTube isn't really working. And thanks for watching.